All right, let's go ahead and kick things off. Welcome everyone to our product clinic. Today's topic is focused on how to deploy our Gigamon Cloud Suite for AWS. I'm really excited about this clinic because it brings together and wraps up what we've been covering for the past three. So Ron's got a lot of great information to convey. Welcome, everyone. My name is John Zucker. I run our Gigamon VÜE Community, and we'll go ahead and run through a couple of level set slides, and then I'll quickly turn things over to Ron. All right, so we've got 45 minutes. We can certainly go longer if needed. This is going to be a technical deep dive along with a demonstration of our capabilities. If you have any questions, please add them to the question panel that you should see at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer all of your questions during the session. If we are unable to do so, we will answer them in our VÜE community, specifically in the hybrid public cloud group, which I encourage you to join. We will also post the deck that Ron will be running through, as well as a link to the recording, which will also be up on our YouTube channel. At the end of the session today, there's just a very short 3-question survey. I'd like to get a little bit of feedback from you and also ideas on future topics that we might want to deliver. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, turn things over to Ron Howard. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, John. Welcome all. I'm so glad that you're here today. All right, let's go and get started. So today we are going to be going over the prerequisites. We'll be talking about the licensing, permission, security groups, and other caveats that you may face during the deployment of our solution. We will then actually go through, I'll show you a fully deployed solution and show you some of the benefits of seeing traffic with it deployed. I will then delete it and then redeploy it in real time so that you can see the deployment going in live action. So let's talk about the hurdles first that you may be facing in your environment during a deployment. So the first one that we've identified working with customers, you guys, is that having the appropriate access, role-based access controls within AWS, or getting the right stakeholders to perform the different functions. Prime example would be subscribing to the service itself within AWS in the marketplace by going to the AMIs inside of AWS and deploying an instance without a subscription enabled. You will receive error messages there within the environment to try to do the deployment. The other things can be actually not having permission sets within to create an IAM policy or modify it, modifying security groups. Like I said, the IAM policy is another one there where if I don't have all the right bits in place as far as the actual access control for Fabric Manager, the vSeries node, or communication with different VPCs, or even different subscriptions, I will not have a successful deployment. I need to be able to have that trusted relationship between all the different components to allow proper communication. And speaking of communication, the next element would be security groups, firewall rules. Now that's allowing the actual traffic to flow. What ports and protocols are required for proper communication for the different components? I will be reviewing that again and also showing you within AWS a base example. Now, please grant me a little leeway here. I did not tighten it down completely, but I wanted to add some of the elements to kind of get you started. Remember, each environment is unique. You may have particular guardrails in place That's where utilizing professional services or technical success team to help guide you through those hurdles. Something to take into consideration, your sales engineer or manager can help you get in touch with the right people if you need additional guidance. Another critical element that I've seen that can cause a failure, especially if you're needing to go into the CLI, is not having key pairs created and attached to the different Gigamon components when they're deployed. If you don't have a key pair created, you will not be able to deploy a vSeries node because that's important for that level of communication. Also, you would not be able to go into the CLI and do troubleshooting at that point because AWS requires a key pair to be able to log in. In AWS instances, questions, the instances that you have deployed, are they supported by VPC mirroring? AWS has documentation that defines the instances that are supported with VPC mirroring. The great thing is that if you do have instances out there deployed that do not fall under the bucket for mirroring, we do have alternative solutions to enable you to see that traffic flow. And also, another important factor to consider is how many instances do you want to monitor within your environment? AWS has a pretty strict policy that's defined in their environment where if we're going to go with the baseline that if you have more than 10 instances that you want to monitor, it's going to require a load balancer to actually aggregate that traffic. That is a AWS requirement, not a Gigamon requirement for VPC mirroring. Let's go ahead and take a look at the policy. Here's an example policy that I pulled, and this one here is in our documentation. What you're seeing here is for basic mirror trafficking or traffic mirroring, excuse me. And there are specific elements in each part of that policy for different functions work. What you're seeing here is what's required for FM to communicate properly within your environment. That's just continued there. And then for VPC mirroring, it requires these elements. If you're missing any of these elements, your solution will not work. Additionally, if you're having FM orchestrate the deployment, you'll also need these additional functions in there as well. Now, take into consideration if you do use third-party orchestration, that you do not have, you don't, it's not required to have all those different functions available in your IAM policy. Like I said, that each environment is unique, and Gigamon does provide several different examples to go by to help you get started. Now let's go ahead and talk about communication for traffic flow. There are certain elements that are required. You'll see here is we've already defined the inbound and outbound rules that are required for a successful deployment. And you see here, this one is showcasing what's required for Fabric Manager, the vSeries node. And let's go ahead now and showcase the environment. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to show a successful deployment and show you some of the bits and pieces that are there within Fabric Manager. And then we're going to work backwards and we're going to look at the configuration inside of AWS itself and look and see where there might be additional failures or help you pinpoint if you're having struggles. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my environment. Once I'm logged into my Fabric Manager or your Fabric Manager, I'll be taken to the initial splash screen. The next two icons can be your traffic icon and your inventory. So working backwards, I want to go ahead and start at the traffic icon to showcase what you will see once you have fully deployed environment and some of the cool features that are available here. For example, in my monitoring session, I have the ability to show that I am sending traffic from the vSeries node. If I had multiple vSeries node, I would be able to go and pick the vSeries node that I wanted to actually look at the traffic cone to make sure that it's in a healthy state. I can even look at my tunnel endpoint and show that from the tunnel endpoint, I am sending traffic there to my tool. And if I look at my tool, I just simply spun up an NTOP and sending simple pings. You can see it is actually gathering traffic from the vSeries node. With it, and also additionally here, talking about things, if you recall earlier, I mentioned having the right instance available. As you can see here, I have 3 workloads that are spun up within AWS. 2 are in orange, 1 is grayed out. The 2 that are in orange are the ones that are being monitored by Gigamon and that I can capture the traffic through VPC mirroring. The one that's grayed out is a workload that is not supported by VPC mirroring. In this model here, the best solution would be to use our agent-based solution, where we put a physical tap on each one of the workloads to send traffic. So let's pause here for a second and let's go ahead and take a look under the hood inside of AWS to showcase exactly what's been done. As you can see here, I am looking at the instances that you saw previously on this screen here. So where would I go to help me troubleshoot some of the information here? So one, for example, if you notice the T2 instance is the Windows server that you saw on the screen. That's a T2 micro. That is not supported. Any T2 instance right out of the gate is not supported. Other things to take a look at, if you notice here how I have different security group names associated there. Do I have a security group defined that does not have all the appropriate permissions associated to it? That is something to take in consideration. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Fabric Manager that I have deployed, for example. And let's go ahead and go down to security. As you can see here, I have some of the defined permissions there within the ports and protocols, and I have added a descriptor of what they do to allow the actual traffic flow. I can go back once I have things defined, and I can change the sources to be more constrained to only allow certain pathways to go through. Additionally, I also have the IAM role, which I can go and view. I can look at the associated policy. And here I can verify or make changes to the policy in real time if I need to add or remove certain elements within the policy. Also, taking into consideration too, if you recall, it showed the key that I had associated to the account, this key here. If I associate the wrong key to the environment when I deploy it, I need to stop, delete, and redeploy. AWS does not, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but if you associate the wrong key, you have to delete and reinstall the environment. Also within here, if I go to the VPC, oops. I can go down to the bottom to traffic mirroring, go to traffic mirroring sessions. If you'll notice, this is the environment that I have deployed. I have 2 mirroring sessions established, because it is, if you notice the source, the ENIs are different. So it's capturing the traffic flows. It's copying that traffic from each one of these workloads that I have deployed as showcased here. So the Gmon Linux and the Gmon Win server are both sending traffic. So let's go ahead now and delete what we have deployed and actually deploy it and have a successful solution. I'm going to go and delete it. That's like a clean environment. In your environment, you can actually go in to the monitoring domain itself, which is going to be under inventory, AWS, and delete the monitor domain itself. And it will delete the monitoring session. And in just a minute, all this will be deleted. I want to delete the monitor name as well. I bet you anything that if I go back to my traffic mirroring sessions there, if I refresh this, those will be gone. And lo and behold, those sessions are no longer present there within the traffic mirroring session. FM orchestration will actually take care of the majority of all the commands required, which reduces the overhaul that you have to handle, or overhead you have to handle in your deployment. So let's go ahead and click new. So the way I like when I do a deployment is I want to tell a story, because I look at it from the standpoint that eventually I'm going to be handing this off to somebody else to manage. So what I want to do is simplify the process so where they can look at the screen, they will know right away what they're looking at. So here, for example, if you noticed, I had started the naming convention of Gmon for all the instances I have in there. So I'm going to follow that same logic. Of course, you may have your own case, and this is unique only to Gigamon in general. So this does not propagate across other environments in your infrastructure. So I have AWS because I'm actually monitoring AWS. Traffic acquisition method. I am using VPC traffic mirror. So I want to change it to that. The tunnel MTU, I have it set to this variable here because there's 49 bits associated there with the traffic when it's encapsulated for the header that you need to take into account, because if the MTU setting is off, I can actually create fragmentation. In this case, we're not using a load balancer because I have less than 10 instances. So I don't need to create a load balancer. I'm creating a connection name, which I am going to call I've got an EC2 instance. If I had the FM located on-prem, then I would choose create new, and I would actually have static configurations. The region, it's within US East. So I want to go and choose North Virginia. The account, since my IAM policy is valid, it will go ahead and show me the account. Now, take into consideration that if there are multiple accounts that you need to monitor, you'll need to add all of those accounts to this page. The great thing is that you can go back and add those accounts to this configuration page once you have the initial one set up. So the VPCs here. So I have two VPCs configured for this environment. I have management and as well as production. Since I am managing the environment and I want to have it centrally located, I need to go ahead and add the management VPC to the environment. So here are my production. So now I've established the two VPCs that are going to be part of the monitoring domain. So I go ahead and click save. And also you might see here the check permissions tab. The great thing about this here is that this will go through and do a quick check of my environment to make sure that the IAM policy is successful for VPC mirroring. I do have the ability to click on success and actually go through and review the policy. If you review the video that I created back in June on IAM policies, I go more in depth on check permission sets. So let's go ahead and click save here. So that's step number one. Step number two is actually creating the centralized VPC management. Where do I want to have my virtual appliance deployed? So I want to use the management VPC. As you can tell that I have it well defined to easy identify. Remember the keys. So I have defined keys. Excuse me.
Hey, while you're doing that, just a reminder, you guys have questions, please go ahead and ask them, and we'll certainly answer them for you. But you should see a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. Thanks.
You notice here that I've now well defined all the elements that are needed for this environment. I do have the ability to add tags and include the values in case you have defined guardrails within your environment that are required, for example, the volume, the instance. So we have the ability now to create well-defined tags that will benefit your environment. So it'll match the requirements that you may have in place. So now I'll go ahead and click save. Oops. Look at that. That's a great thing about a live action because you may create an error. As you can tell here, it said, hey, you forgot to include the actual vSeries node that you want to deploy. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to version. And my FM version is 6.7. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the 6.7. Go ahead and click save. It's now launching. And this takes just a few minutes. But while it's launching, one important thing I did want to cover briefly with everyone here, I'm going to walk through quickly one of the important things that's required if you're large scale. By default, when you upload FM originally, you have the ability to deploy the vSeries solution with only 1 gig worth of traffic. But what I wanted to showcase here is how to install a license real quickly. I've created one earlier. So here I would click on the system tab or settings tab down below, go to licenses. From the FM cloud, I do the drop down. You have fixed and you have VBL active. The fixed is the defined function if you're managing your physical appliances that are Gigamon. The VBL active is going to be any of your cloud licenses that you need to active. You'll see that we have a trial license already established, but I want to add the final license. So what I would do is I would click activate license, download the JSON file here. I would then take this file over there to my license portal, apply the JSON file, and then download that JSON and then bring it back here. But since I already have it downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and activate it. Next, choose the file.
Hey, quick question then.
Yes.
So it sounds like there's a multi-step process in which to get the information you need to apply the license that you're doing here in FM, but also in the license portal, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm glad you brought that up for everybody's benefit. My colleague next month will be giving an in-depth presentation on all the different licensing functions and capabilities and how to pull a license from the license portal and then apply it. I'm just showing you quickly here, capturing a license and then look at that. It looks like the file that I was given. Let's try this again. There we go. As you see now, I have it removed the trial license and put in a 50 terabyte license where it gives me a start and end date and showing that it's activated. And yes, this is a trial license, but yours would actually show commercial here under type. Let's go ahead and see if, oh, look at this. We now have a vSeries node fully deployed. It gives us a management IP. If needed, I can SSH into that because I did create the keys, if you recall. And I would be able to do troubleshooting of this instance here. Well, let's go ahead now and go and create the monitoring session. So I go click on traffic, go to virtual, orchestrated flow, AWS. I want to go ahead and click new, monitoring session. Just keep the same structure, but this time it's going to be the visibility, right, of my environment. So here, and the way I'm telling the story is that I'm saying that I'm gaining the visibility of this particular environment. The connection is going to be my production side because that's all I want to take a look at. I don't need to see the traffic there on the management side because that's where my vSeries node and Fabric Manager are located, and I don't need to monitor the traffic on those points. If we had multiple vSeries nodes deployed, I would then go ahead and enable the traffic distribute, and then it would actually aggregate the traffic equally distributed for load balancing capability. Let's go click next. I now have a nice canvas to make it real simple. So if you notice here that I'm looking at the production VPC, as you can see here, it's actually seeing the information there from my management environment, but I don't want to see that. I want to see my production environment. If you recall, we do have 3 instances deployed, but it's only seeing 2 because why? Because these are supported by VPC mirroring. So now the next step would be to go ahead and create a map. So now I want to create the name of Gigamon map. I can give a descriptor of sorry, I cannot chew bubble gum and talk at the same time. So now I go to my rule sets. What type of traffic do I want to see? I want to keep it simple at first just to get a basic idea of the environment. So I'm going to go ahead and choose just IPv4 traffic, and I want to see everything. But what can I do though? I can go back and actually filter and define what I want to see at a granular level. So go and click save. Next, I would go ahead and click on new tunnel. Here I'm sending it to an NTOP tool set. I configure it to use VXLAN. Now this is important on the traffic direction. The next thing you want to do is click out. If I keep it set to in, I will receive an error message saying that I'm not permitted. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and show what happens. Unique identifier that is required. So these are the required fields. This is my dummy one, but if I drag this arrow here, I should get an error message that says incoming link to tunnel with traffic direction is not allowed. That tells me right away that I configured my traffic the wrong direction. So what I do, I click delete. Down below, you'll see that I have one that's already created that's correct, but I just wanted to show you the process. Here's the one that's wrong. So here I would need to go and click here, click delete. Now it's permanently gone from my canvas. Go ahead and drag the one that's correct. Click on the little red dot, drag it over to end top, and click deploy. Here you're seeing the monitoring session that we just created, and it is now sending the information via API calls between your Fabric Manager and the vSeries node, and telling the vSeries node exactly what do I want to send. And then you'll see now that it is successful. At this point, I can click on this environment here and go back to where I showed you earlier where there's traffic. If you recall, I mentioned that this can take up to 15 minutes for this information here to propagate, to actually see the information. And that's why I wanted to show you a successful deployment that had a few minutes to populate information there. Any questions so far? I know I've covered a lot of information in a short period of time.
Yeah, there's a few that have come in. Do you want to take them now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take some.
Well, one of the earlier questions that came in, but I think you've answered it now, right here and throughout the demo is do you have to have Fabric Manager deployed in AWS? And I know the answer is yes.
Do I have to have Fabric Manager deployed in AWS for it to work?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Oh,
I can have Fabric Manager deployed on-prem, like a physical Dell blade, which we call a Tundra blade. It can be a virtual appliance that's deployed on VMware, Nutanix, OpenStack. It can be deployed in Azure or in here. It boils down to, do I have the right permission sets for Fabric Manager to communicate into the AWS environment?
all right. Very good. Very good. Okay. I know you someone said that you had mentioned the load balancing, that it's required in certain use cases. Can you go through that again?
Sure. And I'll provide a document that's provided by AWS after the presentation. So there is a limitation on the number of direct VPC mirrored sessions that you can have running simultaneously without a load balancer. The number depends upon the size of the instance, but it's easier to recall. Just go by the basic rule is 10. So if I have a number greater than 10 instances deployed that I want to monitor with VPC mirroring, I need to enable a load balancer to aggregate that traffic and send it to the tool set. As a matter of fact, give me 1 second. And do I have graphic on that? If you want to ask me another question, I will be pulling up the
Sure. Yeah, there is you want me to ask you the question while you're doing that?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So in your experience in working with different deployments, different customers, and I know you had a slide at the beginning of the presentation around this. What are the most often misunderstood or confusing parts of this type of deployment?
It's actually twofold. and that goes back to my original slide on the dependencies. It's going to be, do I have the right permissions or get the right person to do the work within AWS? Do I have the proper IAM policy to give the Gigamon virtual appliances the appropriate permissions to actually work within my environment? And third, it's going to be the security policy or security groups. Do I have the ports and protocols open to allow that traffic to flow?
All right. Okay, that's what we've got so far.
If I go to the AWS site, they have a strong, and we will provide this information. Let me zoom in on this. But if you recall the load balancer, they're showing here the number of instances, and they're actually sending the traffic through a load balancer because they're defining the environment of having greater than 10 instances as far as traffic flowing, which is required to go through the load balancer to send the traffic to the vSeries net.
All right. Any other things you wanted to show or discuss?
To say that it may appear daunting, but it's not. The only thing that I need to take into consideration is remember the basics. Do I have the right IAM policy? Do I have my security group set to allow the traffic to flow from point A to point B? And do I have permissions to actually make changes there within AWS? If I meet those requirements, then I will have a successful deployment.
Awesome. All right, that is a wrap. I'm going to go ahead and just finish things off. Thank you very much. That was awesome, Ron. As I mentioned, we'll make sure that we post answers to the questions that were asked during the session in the Hybrid Public Cloud group on the VUE community. If you have additional questions that you were unable to ask or think of something, you can ask them in the Hybrid Public Cloud group and we can continue the discussion there. As I mentioned, when you exit out of the Zoom webinar, you will get a short survey. Please take some time to complete that. And as Ron mentioned, our topic for next month is going to be a deep dive on the whole licensing process and licensing methods for Gigamon products. Ron, thank you so much for taking the time to dig into this topic. I know it's an important one. Thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month for our next session. Thanks, everybody.